Hi, welcome to singletrackworld.com. I'm Hannah and I'm here with Ben Page today, who is back from a 3-year tour around the world on his bike. Something that quite a few of us think we might like to do or maybe dream of, and then we find ourselves in IKEA at the weekend looking at sofas.
A great place to be.
Oh. I was going to say wondering where it all went wrong.
Well, true actually, yeah.
So Ben is actually local to Singletrack. He set off, is it 2014?
2014, yeah.
With the help from Blazing Saddles, one of our local bike shops and local premier dealers. And he started off on a Surly. Was it a cross-check? Or
a long-haul disc trucker.
There we go, long-haul disc trucker. So started off on that and then ended up on the bike behind us. So you might have seen on Singletrack World yesterday, I put up a story about a video called The Frozen Road, and that is Ben's video. So I thought, he lives locally. Before he goes off around the world again, let's have a look.
I used to have Singletrack pictures posted all on my bedroom wall when I was growing up. So
honoured.
Good to be here.
So this, if you can see, is where Ben has been, kind of from the bottom of the world.
From Patagonia, so a place called Ushuaia down at the southern tip of South America, and then from there, 5 continents. Yeah. Yeah,
and a bit of a plane journey. So if you look
cheated for a little while.
If you look on Vimeo at the moment, there's his main Frozen Road movie and a few others that he's made all the way up here. And I have to say, I have a low tolerance for bike movies. I skip to the end because I watch quite a lot of them. Yeah. But they are entertaining and they do give, I think, a more honest appraisal of travelling than you might always see.
I must say, these were little videos edited on the fly, so I was carrying a small little laptop with me and kind of edited for 2 days or something. So they're not my proudest work, well, but they give a flavour of South America and what's there.
They're still fun to watch. So then hopped up through here, and it's in kind of Whistler that the Frozen Road starts, isn't it?
The Frozen Road starts around about here, so at the very bottom of the Yukon Territory, and then from there, rode for roughly 1,500 miles from Whitehorse up to the Arctic Sea in a little town called Tuktoyaktuk. It took about a month, and as I say, this film, The Frozen Road, is chronicling that part of the trip.
And then after the Frozen Road, you hopped over here through Asia.
Through Asia across to Istanbul, and then began again in Cape Town, and cycled up through Africa to Cairo. And finally, just last year, late last year, from Athens back to Hebden Bridge, back to Singletrack.
Yes. And by the time he got to us, he was telling me, it's on a single speed, just a gloss up that the gears kind of gave up. And Ben lives at the top of a steep hill.
Very steep hill. And sadly, I was going up that hill. I was pretty committed to making sure I was going to pedal every last metre of arriving back home. So in this big gear, just zigzagging up through a little village, Heptonstall, trying to get to the top of the hill. Pretty painful way to end.
And how many thousand miles was it?
I think somewhere in the region, maybe 35, 40,000. I never kept track.
You didn't Strava it?
Didn't Strava it. No, I'm not on Strava. Didn't keep a little odometer or anything.
Right.
But I think roughly in that ballpark.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I've been doing my research, and I was watching Ben's early films last night. And you start out with a group of friends, and it's kind of like, lads on holiday.
Yeah.
Except that you're into a headwind like this, and it just looks horrible.
The Patagonian wind, down in Tierra del Fuego, just some of the most atrocious wind I think I've ever had.
Miserable.
It's a headwind all the way. We're going in the wrong direction.
So, and you're kind of on roads at that point, and then your friends go home, and then you're like, this is just roads. I'm just riding on roads. This isn't adventure.
Yeah.
So then you kind of...
Well, I started to find that I had far more enjoyment and gained a lot more out of the trip when I was off-road.
Right.
Following, 2-track, finding bits of single-track and stuff. I'd initially set off thinking, if I'm going to go around the world, there's no way I'm going to do it off-road because it'll take too long.
Right.
So kind of got a standard touring setup like most people do. But it was kind of at the advent of bike packing becoming a thing, so more equipment was coming out for bike packing, more people were sharing routes.
Right.
More resources going up online. So as I was going through South America, finding that I really just wanted to be off-road, having much better experiences for me anyway, but was still with that Surly bike, so I was kind of like half and half, trying to go to some exciting places.
But not get a pinch flat.
But not get a pinch flat and not just kind of completely smash my bike up.
Yeah. So, and it sounds like, or it seems like there was an awful lot of pushing. Like at one point I wondered whether maybe a rucksack with a scooter on the back might have been better.
Well, so in South America I didn't have a rucksack with me, but for the rest of the ride I carried a small rucksack on the back of my bike.
Right.
So that when the inevitable day or two of pushing would happen over a mountain pass or something, I could just sling all the heavy gear I had with me into my rucksack, so I could like pick the bike up and
make the bike more portable. Yeah. Good. Cunning. So before we get onto we've got some video clips to come up. So before we get onto the frozen road bit and the last bit of the cold stuff, what was the kind of how do you feel having travelled by yourself and with friends? Which is the way to go, do you think?
Oh, there's no answer to that.
No?
I mean, there's such different experiences, and both rewarding and rich in their own way.
Right.
So the frozen road, for example, this was a period where I was on my own, having to deal with some pretty difficult circumstances on my own. Mm-hmm. Which is really hard, but really rewarding at the same time, and really important to go through that. But then straight after that, I was then riding from Beijing westwards across Asia, joined by 3 friends. Right. And that was just such a laugh, so much fun, like really, really enjoyable, but maybe didn't attain to the same sort of like, personal development goals or whatever you might set yourself. So it was really good fun and a good laugh, but didn't really have that sort of fear factor. Okay. Which is quite important, I think. It kind of, if you find something that makes you scared, often that's something that you should probably do. And go and get alone is quite a scary thing to do.
Okay, so we'll have a little look at a video clip of Ben alone.
I don't want to be here in a place I have no experience, I've never been, don't really know where I am.
So I think that people have just been able to see you kind of trudging through knee-deep snow. This is on the frozen road where you decided that even frozen roads weren't adventure enough, and that maybe you ought to go on a little detour along a frozen river instead.
Yeah. Well, so for that part, I mean, I'd just been following a little road called the Dempster Highway up in northern Canada, which, I mean, it was unavoidable. It was 500 miles of just snowy gravel road, but I mean, I didn't really want to be on roads so much, and then found out in this small town, Fort McPherson, that it's possible to follow a river going north and leave this Dempster Highway behind me, and that felt quite a scary prospect, quite an adventurous prospect. And as I just said, like, if you have something that scares you, you should probably go and do it. So I went down this river, and unfortunately, this big snowstorm came in and kind of trapped me on this river. Couldn't ride my bike, and the result was quite a few days of pushing and just try and get to safety.
I'm not going to have too many spoilers here, because you really should watch the film, because it's not just a good tale, but you went to some efforts to shoot it. So if you watch it, Ben shot it all by himself. There's only him there, and there's only him with the camera. And if you've ever tried to shoot yourself out on the trail, you'll know it's such a faff. You run ahead, you put the camera down, you run back, you hop on the bike, you ride past it, you get the camera, and then you go, oh, I've chopped my head off, I need to go back, do it again. And it is mind-blowingly annoying. And I hate doing it. And let's have a look at some of the lengths that Ben went to get the shots. So that one, you see, he's obviously gone and put the camera somewhere a really long way away, or through some deep snow. Yeah. And then you were telling me earlier, you have to put the camera in, and then you have to go a really long way round.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I've been filming from when I very first set off. I decided to take a camera with me and teach myself how to take photos, make films. So I thought it'd be really something new, something interesting. I had no background in it. I was a geographer beforehand, so no like background in filmmaking.
But you could read a map though.
Yeah, I didn't get too lost. But I'd had, this 15 months previously, just kind of getting used to filming and kind of getting used to that process of kind of stopping and setting up shots and stuff. But that was all done where you could just walk straight in front of the camera, go pick the bike up and go off. But then in snow is something completely different because it doesn't look very good for a shot if you've just got a load of footsteps going to and from for the camera in the snow. So I had to always take these little circuitous routes around to make sure I wasn't like treading in the shot. Added another dimension of difficulty, I suppose.
Yeah, and when we were talking before, you were saying that you needed to get the footage because you wanted to make a film, but at the same time, you didn't want someone to find you dead and go, well, this is why he died. Yeah, well, it's too busy doing Instagram.
It's a ridiculous thing, isn't it, to be like filming in what is what was a fairly dangerous, difficult situation. And there's no two ways about it. It's a bit daft, but I knew I was filming that part of the ride quite intensively to turn into a short film. I knew I wanted to go into filmmaking later on, when I eventually got back home. That half my brain was saying, all right, get off this river, this is dangerous, just put all your efforts, time, mind into pushing the bike and getting to safety. And the other half is saying, no, this is going to be an integral part of the story. If you want to be a filmmaker, you've got to film this bit.
Suffer.
Yeah, you got to film when you shouldn't be, because they're the most interesting part. So in the frozen road, almost every shot that I took on that river is in it, which means I didn't really shoot that much.
Right.
But I mean, when I went to editing, I wish I'd shot more. But at the time, you just don't know how things are going to go.
At the time, you'd quite like to survive.
Yeah, at the time I was thinking I was wasting far too much time setting up a camera.
Right. Shall we have a little look at the bike that you rode? You got this, so you stopped in Whistler. Once you got to Whistler, you stopped.
Yeah, so
did a bit of work.
Had a few months in Whistler working, trying to save up a bit of money, and managed to kind of organise part of this trip. I needed to have a big overhaul of kit, really. I'd ridden up, what I'd arrived with is what I'd set off with in Ushuaia in South America.
Right.
And this seemed like a great time to get a new bike. And I couldn't afford a new bike, but wrote to a bunch of different companies, asking if I'm going to go up to the Arctic, make this film, going to continue around the world. Would you like to give me a bike? And everyone said no, except for this wonderful company, Fatback, who make fat bikes up in Alaska.
Right. Which would be the right tool for the job, really. Would
be absolutely perfect. So they really very kindly gave me a bike to ride, and it's the bike that I then continued across Asia, Africa, and Europe on. And I've got to say, it performed without a whimper. And it's pretty rare to have a carbon fibre fat bike to go long distance cycling, but I'm just really, really impressed with it. Really impressed.
So when you had the Surly set up in the first part of the journey, what kind of weight was all of that baggage?
I think probably like between 55, 60 kilos.
Okay.
And
then this one?
This one managed to cut it down a lot, down to maybe 40, 45. I was carrying camera equipment, electronics, quite a heavy tent, a laptop. So that was all the heavy stuff. In terms of like the stuff I was using, so clothes and that sort of, that was all, I only had one set of clothes, so I was trying to save weight in certain areas. Yeah, sorry about that. I shouldn't But I mean, with that bike, it's carbon, and that's quite a fear if something goes wrong. But it's ridden for almost 2 years and nothing went wrong. And
you haven't gone for the traditional kind of steel, we can weld it ourselves thing.
But when you're pushing over a mountain for 2 days, you really, really rate having a lighter weight bike.
Yeah.
When you're having to slug it over your shoulder or something.
But it wasn't obviously maintenance free.
No, nothing ever is maintenance free.
No. So what happened to your cranks? These are not the cranks you.
They're not the cranks that I initially had. No, those cranks. When I was in where was it in Zambia, unfortunately managed to snap a crank. Getting a replacement crank was impossible, so I had to kind of just think about how to sort out that scenario. So I drilled a hole a little bit higher up the crank. The pedal obviously wouldn't fit in because the pedal had sheared as well. And so I put a bolt into the crank and rode from there up to Kenya, so about 2,000 miles with a bolt as a pedal.
Right.
So quite a long way. But having said that, it's what the locals do. Most people there have pedals made out of bolts.
Okay.
They're obviously not cycling such large distances,
Uh-huh.
but when in doubt, do what the locals are doing. It usually works.
So, did you kind of prepare well, do you think, for this trip? Or did you just kind of go off on a jolly and a bit of a, what will be, will be? Or did you like have a, I know how to fix this, I need these bits of kit?
No, I hate planning, and I'm really bad at planning. And I'm not sure if I'm bad at planning because I hate planning or which way around it is. But, it's a bike ride, and it's a long time. And on a bike, you get from towns and villages often enough that if something really goes wrong, you've got a mode of transport that you can make it. Bikes are simple enough that you can always make them go, and you can get to where you need to be eventually. So I didn't plan any of it, route wise, equipment wise, just kind of winged it a bit. And
did you have a spot tracker or anything like that?
So I did get a spot tracker halfway through, on the demand of my mum, really.
Did something happen that precipitated the demand?
I think something did. Yeah, you have to watch the frozen road to find out.
Oh, so it was the frozen road that. Okay.
So people can get, before you set off on a trip like this, you get really caught up in the minutiae of it, in the planning. But the reality is that as soon as you start riding, everything changes anyway, and you get so used to places, and your knowledge of a place becomes far more intimate when you're there, that you can then just ask people about where to go, which routes to follow. You don't need to plan too much because you can always just make it happen. Yeah.
Okay. And what kind of budget did you have when you set out?
So I set off with about £9,000,
okay,
which is quite a lot. But that lasted for 3 years.
Right.
So that was all my savings from student loans and all the jobs I've been having since I was 14. I shouldn't say that. You're allowed to work at 16. No, I didn't do any casual labour at 14. So that was it. And so, that was enough to cover the cost of the trip. I tried to keep my costs as low as possible.
Yeah.
So, if you're cycling, transport's free. If you're camping every night, as I was, accommodation's free. So the only cost is food and visas.
Right.
And then flying between continents. So my daily budget was about £3 a day. Okay.
So there you have it, kids.
Yeah.
Go around the world on £3 a day.
That was eating a lot of rice and a lot of porridge. Probably 2 or 3 times more than I'd normally eat.
You did go to some lengths to kind of keep your costs down. That if you've watched the early films, there's one where you get to a border and you're hoping to get on the boat, and it's going to be $45 to get on the boat.
Yeah.
So you went round what looks utterly horrible, like carrying this bike over these sort of streams and logs and trees, like a totally unrideable, barely walkable single track.
It would have been rideable with a proper mountain bike,
right?
But a heavy touring bike, there's no chance.
But you think it was worth it?
Oh yeah, let's say 45. That's that's a few weeks of living. So for a day and a half of punishment, that's definitely worth it. It's like I paid myself $45 for that day and a half.
Right.
So it's quids in.
No, it looks horrible. I'm not sure I'm cut out for around the world.
That did set the precedent for the rest of the ride, just kind of getting used to pushing the bike and going to some pretty silly places.
Okay. So, at one point you say that you kind of need to change it up because the adventure is becoming normal. Like, this is just, you're in these amazing places and you're just like, I'm on the road again. This is just another amazing place. So, do you think that going around the world and doing it day after day, does that take the edge off the adventure, or do you have to go around the world? Could you do it in little segments in your summer holidays?
I've come to the conclusion that actually, unless the aim is to go away for a long period of time and that to kind of be an important reason, which it was for me, 3 to 6 months is the perfect amount of time.
Right, okay.
That's still a long time, and it's long enough to be away from home and conventional life back home and the sort of routine of that you feel like a distance from it. It's not too far away to ever take it for granted. I was often became the case that I was just taking where I was for granted, and the luxuries of being able to be there. And it's a pretty privileged position to be able to, be from the West, where we can choose, have a certain degree of autonomy over what we do. So yeah, between 3 and 6 months, you can really kind of go off the beaten track, kind of still feel like you're off on an adventure. You're not pressed for time. It's not like, I've only got 2 weeks and I've got to get to like this place to fly back home again. So yeah, I think you can do so much in that period. Yeah, and probably go a little bit harder as well.
Okay. Yeah, you never seem to. You get obviously weather beaten, but in the footage that I've seen, you don't get that kind of gaunt, starey, I'm really ill, I've been ill for weeks feeling.
Actually, that didn't get ever that ill. I kind of trained I was just drinking like river water, tap water all the time, so I wasn't really filtering stuff, so I got a bit ill to begin with, and then stomach just kind of got used to things, so never got any serious illness, other than in Sudan, in the Sahara. Right. Got really quite dangerously ill there, and I mean, I've got lots of footage and stuff.
Let's not watch any footage.
But let's not watch that.
That doesn't sound nice.
That's all to come in the future.
I think we've got another little clip from Frozen Road of you being weather beaten.
Just walk, and eventually I'll get there.
Yeah, it's just knee deep seeking stuff, and you had a kind of frozen beard thing going on as well.
I mean, I'm not really one to be able to grow much of a beard. That's like the joke in the family. But I managed to get a bit of a nice beard. Right. And actually, on the last few days, in fact, on that river, and then the last few days of that part of the ride, got quite a lot of frostbite on my nose, and my cheeks, and my chin, and fingertips and toes. But that all healed up.
Healed up.
So I mean, I still don't really feel too much at the end of my fingers, but they're still here. I've still got 5 fingers. So 10 fingers.
You didn't really plan your route.
No.
You didn't really plan your kit. You didn't have a ton of money to spend. You didn't have a spot tracker for a good chunk of the route.
Yeah.
Didn't really have any past experience.
No.
And you didn't get that ill.
Yeah, I think I was pretty lucky, really.
Yes. Have you used all 9 lives now?
I think so, yeah. I've got to be really careful crossing roads. Yeah, I mean, it's just so straightforward to do. The scariest thing is setting off.
Right.
And then as soon as you're on the road, as soon as you start riding, things just fall into place, and you make the decisions whilst you're there. You don't need to make them beforehand. And you just find ways around certain circumstances.
Okay.
So really, it's just having that sort of mindset, just that brief moment of courage to book a flight to somewhere, and know you're going to set off, and then you're tied into it.
See, brief moments of folly usually result in, eBay purchases on a Friday night and that kind of thing, not round the world trips.
Isn't there a saying that all the best expeditions start in the bar? So just have some drinks, make a few outrageous claims that you're going to go and do something, and then you've got to follow it through the next morning.
So Ben's here with us today because his film is now, The Frozen Road is now available on Vimeo to watch for free, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's touring as part of the Banff Mountain Festival, is that the correct
Mountain Film Festival, yeah. So it was in the festival over in Canada late last year, and picked up an award there, which is really exciting because it's my first film, real film, and it's kind of been getting a fantastic reception, which is really good, really good. Yeah.
So Fatback were foolish enough to agree to sponsor you to get through that Arctic section, and then onwards after that.
Well, they didn't really know I was going to continue with the bike through Asia and Africa and Europe for the rest of the ride. They thought I was going to go back to the Surly, but after using it, I was like, this is just perfect.
Right.
Like, a silly thing to do, to go on a fat bike across continents, but it worked out well, and it's a great conversation starter when you go through small little villages and people see what they assume is a motorbike, and you're pedalling it with a grin on your face.
And so you've self-funded all this, apart from the sponsorship from a little bit of help from Blazing Saddles and a couple of people in the beginning.
This was all just equipment sponsorship, so it's been really helpful to get equipment that I couldn't have afforded.
And not everybody was willing to sponsor you, were they?
No. So before setting off on this part, the Frozen Road bit, and you had been making a film out of it, and I didn't know how successful the film was going to be, but I thought this is a good chance to write to a lot of different companies and ask if they can throw me some kit. I wasn't asking for money or anything, just can I get some kit because I needed to have a big overhaul. Almost all companies said no. They just thought it was a foolish idea. They didn't want to be associated with something that could fail or like could have had worse results. So I was working in a shop and managed to get a lot of gear from the shop just at cost price. And then everyone said no.
No, because we think you're going to die. Don't be so silly.
Yeah, it'd be bad press for them, isn't it? But any press is good press.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not.
So you've put this film together yourself.
Yeah.
You've obviously got the rest of the footage from the rest of the world trip.
Yes, there's 3 years of footage sat on a bunch of hard drives.
That's a long film.
Waiting to be edited into a 90-minute film, which I'm hoping to do later this year.
Right.
And so I've got the Frozen Road out online for free. I thought it was really important to share the story for free. But there is on my website, benpagefilms.com, there's a little PayPal link that if you want to donate to the film any amount, then if you follow that link, it would be really appreciated. And as a thank you, you get a free download of the film too.
Or if you're a sponsor that might wish to sponsor the...
If you would like to sponsor this upcoming film, then that would be just phenomenally
He's not
helpful.
going to die because he's already back.
I'm here. And I've got lots more adventures planned for the coming years as well. So please do get in touch if anyone's out there.
So it's not out your system then? It's not like, right, I've done that.
It's firmly in my system now, unfortunately.
Right.
I've got the bug.
Right, so you'll be off again.
Yeah.
So you've been to all of these places. Is there anywhere in the world that you think, I've not been there and I've got to go there?
Yeah, so planning a big expedition across Russia for next year.
Okay.
Without a bike, it's going to be walking and pack crafting. A big multi-month expedition. Hopefully a world first. But we'll see how that goes.
We're not interested in that. You're not taking a bike.
Can't really talk too much about that at the moment. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're going to head back over to the office and maybe have a little look at some of the pictures, rest of Ben's trip, because unlike lots of people that go around the world, he's actually sought out the trails rather than just tried to get from A to B. You've kind of looked for good trails along the way. So I'm going to go and have a look at some of that. Hope you've enjoyed this, had a bit of insight into what it doesn't take to get around the world, really.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Go and do it, yeah.
And have a look at Frozen Road on Vimeo, or there's a link on the singletrackworld.com right now. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.